Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the LGBT pre-mayoral election hustings, not to be confused with a roasting, but hey, the night is young. We're very lucky that we have 4 of the candidates here this evening, I think. And we have a whole load of questions which have been gathered from the LGBT community through groups like the Women's Programme and the QTPOC programme at the LGBT Foundation. So there's some quality questions. So brace yourself, candidates. My name is Kate O'Donnell. I have been in Manchester for 30 years. I have lived in Manchester as a gay man, as a drag queen, as a trans person. So I feel like I represent a lot of the queer community. I'm also a huge lesbian champion and bi champion. So you might know me because I run a trans arts organisation here in Manchester called Trans Creative, and we have a festival called Trans Vegas, which will be happening this year on the 18th, 19th and 20th of June. So look out for that. When I was asked to do this, I was very intrigued. Why would I be asked to host something that is political? And then I thought, actually, just to be LGBT is political. We are debated, we are legislated against. And in terms of Greater Manchester, we make up a lot of what makes Greater Manchester great. There are 220,000 LGBT people here in Greater Manchester, and that more or less makes up one of the boroughs. So it's a good proportion. And also the LGBT rights movement began in Manchester, and we still face inequality, discrimination and hatred. So I think it's really important that we have an ally in the role of mayor and to carry on the work that the LGBT advisory panel have been doing and their action plan. So that's kind of what's going to be happening tonight. I'm going to be forwarding questions to the candidates. They're going to be all shiny and telling us why LGBT equality is so important and why we should vote for them. And remember, if you do want to vote, you can still register to vote. You can register to vote until the 19th of April, and the election is on May the 6th. So come on, LGBT people, listen up. Let's kind of vote and let's get the right mayor for us. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Paul Martin, the Chief Exec of the LGBT Foundation. Over to you.
Thanks, Kate, and thank you to all of the candidates for turning up today, and also thank you to all of you who are watching. You'll be really relieved to know that I'm not a candidate for the Greater Manchester Mayor, and I'm just here just to kind of like set the scene a little bit. So my name is Paul Martin, Chief Exec of LGBT Foundations. My pronouns are he and him. And for those of you that don't know about the LGBT Foundation, we were established in 1975, and we exist to support the needs of the diverse range of lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans people. And we believe in a fair and equal society where all LGBT people can achieve their full potential. We are a nationally significant charity headquartered here in Greater Manchester, and we provide a wide range of community services to a really wide range of people. Over 40,000 people used our services last year, plus another 600,000 people online. And as a result, we serve more LGBT people than any other charity of our kind in the UK. We know that the last year has been really tough on all of us, and it's been equally tough on LGBT communities. COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on many members of our communities, and research that we have undertaken over the last year shows really clearly how LGBT people's mental health, physical health, and drug and alcohol use has significantly increased and deteriorated. And it's really, really important that LGBT people are not excluded from the discussions about how we build back better and how we ensure that our community and our society is a more equal and fairer one. And I think that it's really, really important for us to kind of recognise that the Mayor of Greater Manchester has a whole range of different responsibilities that actually can help LGBT communities. And I'm really glad that Kate mentioned that registrations for voting are still open until midnight on the 19th of April, because it's more important than ever for LGBT communities to become politically active and to get involved in the political process. This evening is the second Greater Manchester Mayoral Hustings that we've run, and previously we've also run hustings for the election of Police and Crime Commissioner, for the local elections, and also for the general elections, although this is the first time that we've done this virtually, so please bear with us with any technical problems that you might encounter. We want to make sure that this space is as safe and inclusive as possible. And so we've chosen to host this webinar in this way so that people who are attending can feel safe and are able to ask questions anonymously if they want to. If you do feel unsafe at any point or witness any problematic behaviour, please let our moderator, Joe Ellis, know using the chat function. And the chat function is also there if you want to contact any of the panelists. So we've been collating questions from a range of different sources that we're going to put to the panelists this evening. We have done some online focus groups, and we have also done some online questions, and some of those questions have been submitted anonymously. And we're also taking questions this evening, and Kate will be able to facilitate that. So I just want to thank the panelists for attending this evening. Not all of the mayoral candidates are here this evening. None of the independent panelists, candidates were able to attend. And actually, really disappointingly, the Conservative candidate actually declined to attend, which I think is really disappointing, particularly because of what is happening nationally in terms of some of the government's recent decisions in relation to LGBT equality. But I'll leave the mayoral candidates to pick that up if they wish, because my job as Chief Executive of LGBT Foundation is to be politically neutral and not to favour any particular party or any particular candidate over the other. So I think that I'm going to hand back to Kate in one moment, but I just want to sort of encourage all of the people that are watching this evening to participate in this process. We will be not only live streaming this on Facebook, we will also be showing a recording of this online as well. So there's still plenty of time to register. 19th of April at midnight, you can still register. But it's really, really important for you to participate in the electoral process. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you very much again to the candidates, and I'm going to hand back to Kate. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I realise you just did the job that I was meant to do in the beginning and do all those things. But you know, when you're a dyslexic, hormonally challenged trans person, sometimes it can be tricky to get all those words together and talk to people. So, but what I am going to do that's really important tonight is kind of set some ground rules. I think we are dealing with politicians here. So I would say, don't be hogging the mic. If you can make your points, we can get through the fabulous questions we've got. And I think just really be honest and speak from your heart, because we really want to know. We really want to know how you are going to honestly support the LGBT community. And nobody is perfect, and we all have to do better, you know, as allies and as people in this world. So I think it's about genuinely hearing that, you know. And I always think that what's brilliant about Manchester is you kind of can't fool Manchester lot, can you? Do you know what I mean? They can see through stuff. And I think, you know, I'm not sure how people on the panel identify in terms of their sexuality and their gender, but I think if you feel like discussing that, bring that in, because you are talking to I think it's time for the panelists now, the candidates, to introduce themselves. And the question we have posed them is, why is LGBT equality important to you? And I think we'll start with Melanie.
Thank you, Kate. So yes, I'm Melanie, and my pronouns are she, her. Do you know, I sit in a party that I look at Twitter and what's going on every day and the discussions that are being had about my party, and I see people openly calling us transphobic. And that is hurtful and problematic for me. And the reason for that is I sat once a while ago with my transgender friend, trans woman, while she cried and while she told me my party was no longer safe for her, and then she resigned her membership. And I swore to her that day that I would make my party safe, however I could, and any way that I could. So genuinely, this is very personal to me, to make sure that there is a fully inclusive party. And I'm here to be aware of the fact that, you know, that is the view that people have of the Green Party. And it's a common problem amongst the other parties. No one is particularly safe, but I want to address it head on. I want to be aware of the fact that often transphobia leads to other issues around homophobia and other intolerances. And I want to be here to say, I am not that person. I'm actively involved in the fight against that element within my party. And I am absolutely with your community, and I am going to make my party the safe place that I need it to be for my friend to come back. And I'm going to bring everyone else along with me on that ride. So yeah, that's who I am. That's why I'm here tonight. And that's the message that is absolutely core to what I'm going to say to you as we talk tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. And just to say to all the candidates, if we could just say which party we're representing tonight.
Yeah, sorry, I am from the Green Party.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. Okay, Simon, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much. So my name's Simon. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate for Greater Manchester Mayor. And it's personal for me. I'm an openly gay man in Greater Manchester, and I love living here. Everything that you've probably heard so far, we're an inclusive city. We're a great place to come and enjoy a night out or live or work. There are problems, and as Mel has just said, we have a huge transphobia issue in this country. It's insidious, it's disgusting, it's vile, and we all have elements in our parties, and we're trying to root them out. So I can say quite clearly right now, trans rights are human rights. A trans man is a man and a trans woman is a woman, full stop. I don't need to debate it. I don't need to argue with any of you. That's my bottom line. I hope that as mayor, if I was elected, I would be open and inclusive to everyone. I hope that we could continue the welcoming nature that Greater Manchester already has. Welcoming the world, welcoming those that are fleeing persecution, welcoming those that are fleeing abandonment, because we do have an LGBT youth problem where they're coming, they're alone, they're sometimes homeless, they've only got a couple of quid in their back pocket, and they're turning up here because they know Manchester, Greater Manchester, as a welcoming, open place for people like them. I will leave it there. I think we can probably discuss further through the evening, but that's my opening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andy Burnham, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Kate. Good evening, everybody. I'm Andy Burnham. I'm the Labour and Co-operative candidate to be re-elected, hopefully as Mayor of Greater Manchester. My pronouns are he, him. I'd just like to commend both Simon and Melanie for the kind of powerful and honest way in which they've started tonight. I think no party is immune, are they, from some of these very vile kind of debates that have opened up in recent times. So I think we're all on the same page in wanting to stand for equality. You asked me the question, Kate, what does it mean to me? My politics are just founded on a belief in the innate equal worth of every single human being, whoever they are, whoever they love, whatever their background. I believe that diversity is the strength of Greater Manchester, as Simon was just saying. I am very conscious in my role that we are the birthplace of the fight for LGBT rights. I take that very seriously indeed, and I want Greater Manchester to be continued to be seen as as I say, a beacon of hope for the right values, a welcoming city. So it goes to the heart of my politics, but I also believe it goes to the heart of our city, how it's seen, what it stands for. So anybody who holds the role of Mayor of Greater Manchester, in my view, needs to be an ally of, not just to say the word LGBT, but every element of the community, to be trusted, to be somebody they can speak to. That's what this role should be about, a mayor for everybody, all parts of the community. That is what I've tried to be in my first 4 years.
Thanks, Andy. And last but not least, Stephen Morris, over to you.
My name's Stephen Morris. I'm the English Democrat candidate for Mayor of Greater Manchester. Spent 15 years in retail management and then 15 years on Metrolink Charms, both as the Unite branch secretary. And now I run a small trade union dealing with equal rights for a lot of people in a lot of workplaces, dealing with all the issues, any form of discrimination I campaign against in the workplace. And I've been doing that now for approximately, 15 years in total, something like that. 4 years directly as head of this small trade union that we do. And it's all about people being treated equally. And that's the main thing. And one of the things we have at the moment is a community that's not being treated equally and fairly. And we've got to address that. And I was quite proud when I first joined the English Democrats that I actually pushed forward that we had the former Pride Queen of Greater Manchester for 2010 as our candidate for Salford Mayor. I was quite proud that it was based on his personality and everything else, but the fact was he was a gay man, and I actually promoted that, and the party changed, as everybody else has said, these issues within parties, and I actually started to change the philosophy of our party from that point on. And we've been open and inclusive to everybody ever since. We've been civic nationalists, that's our view. You know, everybody's part of the English community and should be treated with equal fairness and equality. And going back to my trade union roots, that's what I campaign on, day in, day out. And that's where I am at the moment, still in my office, dealing with cases in between these hustings. So equal rights is very close to my heart of where we've got to be. And that's the way my mayoralty would be run if elected.
Thanks very much. I think what was interesting to hear then is how that level of inequality and homophobia, transphobia is running within the parties and out of the parties. I don't know why I didn't think that wouldn't be, but I think it's something that is happening to all of us in all walks of life. I don't think you have to be LGBT to see and witness inequality and know that it needs to be fought. So that was really encouraging to hear. So I'm going to go in with the questions now. Sadly, these questions were originally recorded by the people who wrote them, and we're going to show videos, but technology being what it is, you've got me in a stripy hoodie. So here we go. It's called round one. I would like to hear what the candidates have in mind for isolated LGBT people, especially older ones, and those who may need more support into sheltered housing or care homes. What training for staff and policies will be put in place? And if it's okay, I'd like to start with you again, Stephen.
Well, we need to make people more aware of the issues concerning each individual. Each individual is different, and that's what we're going to do. We just can't band everybody under one heading. We have to make sure that they can access the facilities that they want and the facilities they need. I just don't like banding everybody into one particular band, saying this particular group needs to have this particular service. Well, within that particular group, there's loads of people with different issues. And I came across that when I worked on the trams. One of the things was there was people who were open about their sexuality, but the others who wanted to keep it quiet and personal. And so we had to work on dealing with people differently. And to me, we've got to make sure that the services are there for them to access, but we've got to make sure that their individual circumstances are looked into. And the people dealing with them have got to be educated and look at it. Don't just categorize people in one particular block, say you are this, you are that. Listen to what they've got to say, listen to how they identify, and then move forward and try and address it from there.
Do you feel that's relevant, just to push a little bit, to particularly aging LGBT community and care homes, and what might be required around those? Because I feel like it's an interesting, we're an aging population, and I think is there anything specific, or do you feel like it's just the same for everybody?
No, there is a lot of there's a lot of education to be done out there, but I think the education has to be done on individual issues. Like I say, I've worked with people who were open about sexuality and went on the pride parades and stuff like that, but I had other people who didn't entertain that and wanted to deal with things in a different way. And I think we've got to educate people that we don't want to categorize everybody in a particular group, and that's my problem with a lot of things, where we tend to categorize people as in groups, and without looking at the individual, you tend to lose the individual identity and the individual issue and the individual problem that you've got to try and sort out. And going forward, like either care homes or anything like that, you've got to find out, train these people so that they can look at the issues with the individual, but adapt around it. You know, don't just go in with a closed mind, go in with an open mind and look at all the options.
Brilliant, thank you. Simon, would you like to go next?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's really interesting because this subject came up at the Jewish Community Hustings last week, and it was about care homes and residential homes tailored to that community. And I went, my answer, and I'll repeat it, is I've got friends in their 50s now, heading towards their 60s, and they're all asking themselves, who's going to look after me when I get old? I haven't had children, or I am separated from the rest of my family, and for whatever reason, who's going to look after me, and how are they going to look after me? And it's really interesting with Stephen talking about individuality, because I think, yes, everyone is an individual and everyone has the right to make choices for themselves and decisions for themselves. But having those safe LGBT plus nursing homes and residential homes are going to have to happen. I think just for the sake of people feeling secure in their old age, and feeling happy where they're living. I know right now, if I was 65, 70 years old and I was told I had to go into a care home, I'd be terrified of going into a run-of-the-mill care home, because how many of those people around me are also LGBT? How many of those people around me understand my lived experience? So having those care homes in the future, I think, is going to have to happen for a choice. So it's there as a choice for people if they want to go into those spaces and retire into those spaces. And I think that's part of the individuality and choice around it. But I know friends of mine have said, I would want a place where they understand me and what I've been through. Yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you. Right, next. Let me just check. Melanie, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. What I am aware of, you mentioned particularly about older people, is that there is a sort of an acknowledged phenomenon within the LGBT community that older people quite often end up going back into the closet in order to access and gain healthcare and support as they get older and to go into care homes. That's something that's just a tragedy, that particularly sort of the older generation now that are looking at care homes, they were the pioneers. They were the sort of those who sort of led the way for those who are now able to live a much different life to that those people lived. And the thought of them having to go back into the closet to access healthcare is just abhorrent. And there is, as far as I know, only one dedicated LGBT old people's care home within the country, which isn't within Greater Manchester. So what we're looking at is, how do we make the spaces that are available more friendly and accommodating? And obviously education has got to be a part of that, and education right sort of throughout the whole process. So not just educating those who are working in that field, but making sure we have a full education system from children in school right the way through to those going into work in those sorts of fields. But that goes further really than just wanting them to understand what it might be to be LGBT. It's looking at particular problems. And this sort of brings me round again to the Gender Reform Act and reforming those sorts of things. It's really important that someone is allowed to die with the identity that they have really held and treasured. And it's really important that those working in social care have got the ability and the skills to be able to support someone to make sure that they are able to be buried with and have their name correctly represented and their gender correctly represented on their death certificate. And it might seem a small thing for some people, but I know how hard people have had to fight for their identities. That's really, really key. And then just as a sort of linked aside, I think it's massively important that we recognise that those who are working in social care are doing such a massively important job, and that they are actually paid properly, trained properly, and valued properly to enable them to do this amazing work and to take on all these extra skills that I'd like them to have to support those within the community. So thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Great points. Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, everyone's made good points. So I want to explain a little of what I've done on this as mayor. I set a goal of Greater Manchester being an age-friendly city region, and we are the only UK city region recognised by the World Health Organization as such. But as part of that, we recognise that beneath that big claim, you need to demonstrate that you are supporting all older people and recognising their particular needs. So we've had a discussion at the Greater Manchester Reform Board about how do we support people across Greater Manchester as they grow old, recognising that the number of older LGBT people continues to increase year on year. And there was one meeting of the Reform Board where Paul and the LGBT Foundation attended with Pride in Ageing and presented plans for the LGBT extra care facility. So we are bringing through, working with Manchester City Council, the first dedicated facility in Greater Manchester, which I think is a major step forward. And whoever is mayor come May, I think should be talking to the other 9 boroughs and saying, okay, Manchester often leads in this territory, but where is your plan to do the same? To answer the question more broadly, though, because it's not solved just by building care facilities. Training was the question, and I think Mel was putting it really well about people fearing what might happen when they go into any form of residential or institutional care setting. I think there's evidence that some people have been bullied in those settings, so the fear of that is huge. So the training is absolutely critical, as is the regulation and the oversight. In terms of what training are we promoting, Pride in Practice amongst GPs is something that we are actively promoting through the Greater Manchester Health and Care Partnership. And just one final point, Kate, I just want to point to the manifesto that I've launched today. There is a specific commitment in there to ask all health providers in Greater Manchester to set out a plan for how they are meeting the needs of their LGBT plus patients and communities. And we want those plans to be published so that everyone can see them. So I hope that answers the question. I think the debate has opened up properly now about how do we support people as they grow old and give people the services and the security that they're looking for. But I think we're kind of at the beginning of it rather than at the end of it. And I wouldn't want to overclaim this evening. What I would say is this debate needs to move forward quite quickly in the next mayoral term. Because
we're not getting any younger as
we're not.
I mean, I think you're right. I think it feels like a beginning and it feels exciting. I just hope that they are going to be some of the most fabulous care homes ever. So moving on to my next question. What will you do to tackle the rise in transphobia that exists not only in hate crimes, but more recently in public policy? So I'm going to start with Simon for this one.
Thanks. So I know the LGBT advisory panel has been disbanded. I think that is a ridiculous decision by our government, and our Conservative candidate isn't here to defend it. I think that says it all, really. We have a real problem with transphobia. There is, and it's ramped up, and so many conversations are being had, and Andy's right, we're having so many conversations across us all now, and Mel in her opening as well. We're all having these conversations. How do you stop it? How do you change minds? I had a conversation at our recent conference about it, and someone was saying, do you know, it's odd when the Gender Recognition Act came in over 15 years ago now, 16, yeah, 2005. It wasn't seen as controversial. It wasn't, you know, there was the protest, there was a few people, there was a few columnists, but since then, and since it was being looked at to see if it needed changing, there's just been an explosion of hatred and ignorance and, dare I say it, stupidity about the debate. And some of it's just been hateful. And, you know, you see these streams on Twitter, and I think, how do we stop that? Because, you know, do we report it to Twitter? Do we get them to cancel these tweets and delete them? Will social media actually play their part? And I am hopeful, especially since the US presidential election, that Facebook has started to recognise they have a social responsibility, and are starting to actually manage some of these extreme groups and voices a little bit better than they were. He's in the wrong place. And
so annoyed about transphobia. He's getting up, he's getting down, he's trying to work it out.
But so it's really difficult. I can repeat what I said at the beginning. I will stand with every person, non-binary, trans, LGBT, always, and call out attack and call out stupidity and protest with you and march with you, as I have done for the past 20 odd years. And that's not going to change on my part, but I think we do have to get real about age appropriate sex education. I think that if we are to have a new generation of accepting people, that we need to get serious about what we teach our kids and our teenagers about what is acceptable, and what society and how an inclusive society looks, which we have failed at for many years. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, wasn't it? I do apologise.
Passion, and that's good. I just think it's really interesting. It's like here it talks about not only in hate crimes, but more recently in public policy. So this is about the rise of transphobia in public policy, which is kind of your bread and butter out there. So I just wondered if you could comment on that, Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing for me in dealing with this is to acknowledge how often I, not necessarily personally, but I as a woman am weaponized in this discussion, and how the rights of women are put as being opposed to the rights of trans women and trans people in general, and how that is being used to fuel fear and to fuel what we're seeing is the rise in transphobia. And I think that acknowledging the fact that that is how I am being used, and that those who seek to speak on behalf of women do not actually speak on the majority of women. That's been shown that the vast majority of women are actually significantly in favour of recognising trans women as women. They are not transphobic, and it's a false narrative to use that is really important. And I think within the party, the Green Party, we have, as I've said, we've got a problem with transphobia, but we are collectively pulling together, and we have at the most recent conference passed policies that support self-identification, that recognise trans parents. We've defeated a trans exclusionary policy that was dressed up as being one relating to women's rights. I'm part of those sort of motions within the party. And that is just, this is just about bringing that out into the wider option. It's about educating, it's about making people aware of the issue, but also it's about countering the false narratives that surround transphobia. Obviously, the role of women is a key one that I've mentioned, but it's looking at the sort of narratives that we get about sport, and should people who are transgender be able to compete in sport in the gender that they identify with. And the science completely supports that there is no unfair advantage, but yet that still is maintained. The one that particularly upsets me because of my background as a lawyer is around putting trans people into the wrong prison, and how that builds up as a narrative. We just actually need some very sensible messaging to actually educate and to put these to bed. And we need to we need to completely be intolerant of intolerance. And we need to make sure that all hate crimes are treated exactly as they are, as hate crimes, and that the police are empowered and the police are educated to recognise these issues and to act on them when they are there. And we need to make our streets safe, and we need to make our city safe for everyone. Right. And we aren't doing that at the moment, and we are failing transgender people, and we are allowing transphobia to bloom, and we've got to stop, and we've got to act, and that is every one of us.
And I think for me, just before I move on to the candidates, it's really important to see that I think how minorities are treated really says a lot about our society. It's kind of a microcosm. Even if you have no feelings towards trans people or whatever, you have to recognise that is holding up a mirror to how society is treating certain people in our society. Anyway, I'm going to come to you now, Andy. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about distracting you, Simon. I was turfed out of my my perch in the kitchen before, so sorry about that. But can I agree with your last statement there, Kate? I completely agree, and that's why Greater Manchester has always taken a absolutely unequivocal stance on hate crime of any kind, and we continue to do that. I said at the start that I've been very conscious of my role in being there for every community, and I was very determined to attend Sparkle, which I did in my early period as mayor, and that was very much sending a message of solidarity to the community, recognising everything that Mel and Simon have said. In terms of what more we can do to tackle hate crime and transphobia, there are specific proposals in the gender-based abuse strategy that has recently been put out for public comment and consultation. We have specifically recognised the need to rehouse trans people who are fleeing abuse of various kinds, and making sure that there is support provided in an emergency context, recognising the risks that people will face. We have been an early adopter of a pilot scheme, which people may know about, supported by the LGBT Foundation, working in primary care settings, providing support to those experiencing gender-based abuse and hate crime. Just to finish on this point about public policy, I mean, others have mentioned it, Simon, I think, the government, I think, is veering into, well, they're playing a very dangerous kind of form of politics, I think. The decision they took last year to almost abandon effectively the legislative drive towards equality through self declaration and recognition. And I also am concerned about the disbanding of the LGBT advisory panel, and that obviously the Conservative candidate is not here tonight. I think we've got to not let this go. Basically, I think we need equality in law. I wrote to the government to support that and became part of the debate. But this is about human rights. I think we need to find consensus and keep working towards consensus, but on the basis of equality in law. And it goes back to what Simon said at the start. That statement, the very clear statement that Simon made, is a statement that I would agree with. I think Norman was asking us in the chat whether we would agree. I absolutely would agree with the way, the very clear and emphatic way in which Simon puts it. So I think there's, as others have said, there is a major issue here that isn't where it needs to be. And Greater Manchester has been a leader on these issues, and we need to bring people back together, I think, and keep on calling for recognition in law and proper reform of the Gender Recognition Act.
Thank you. Stephen from the English Democrats, I wonder what your stance is on transphobia in terms of policy and hate crimes, and just where does it...
We're on a hustings here because one of the things is, if it's public policy, then you vote the people out who are making that policy. That's what we're all about. So as an example, and I'm not having a go at Andy here, I'm just saying, if Andy had made a policy that we didn't agree with, we vote him out. If I was mayor and I made a policy that people didn't like, they would vote me out. If somebody's making a policy that you don't like, vote them out. That's what we do here. The issue on the hate crime, Greater Manchester has a massive problem. And that is because under the current mayoralty, the police have been put under special measures because of failing to report a lot of crime. And so who are they going to turn to? How these hate crimes, hate incidents going to be reported? Or are they just going to be ignored or swept under the table, or just left for time and immemorial? So the issue is, we've got to make sure the police are fit for purpose. We've got to turn that around. We've got to make sure that they can be approachable, that hate crimes can be reported, and that they will be investigated. The other thing is, I'll make 2 points. There is a debate needed about sport. There is a clear debate about sport, and who runs in what races and who boxes in which boxing matches. Because I know of one boxing match where the opponent got absolutely slated, and in a race where obviously the transgenders, they run the race and they win, because it's not a fair, it is unfair advantages in these, and it's a debate that needs to be done. They need to answer the question of what's going to occur. I recently watched the issues around tennis, because for some reason they always bring in tennis about men's and women's, and then obviously you got the trans in between them different groups as well. And they tried to weight it different to try and make it match. There is an unfair advantage one way or the other, but it's a debate that needs to be done. And to say there's no unfair advantage, I think that boxer that got slated would argue a completely different, on a different platform. But my issue is the hate crime. The only way that we can address any hate crime is to make sure that our police are fit for purpose, that they investigate it, and they bring people to justice on that. And at the moment, Greater Manchester Police is not fit for purpose, and that occurred under the current mayoralty, and we need to change that.
Okay, thank you. Interesting, we've gone down a road of sports and transphobia. It feels like a debate, that to me. I think that's the danger with that. It feels like it can be heading into a gender critical debate, and I think that can fuel
so just I don't have the answer to that. That's why I say it's got to be debated.
Yeah, I think there is always something that can be debated around trans people, and I think, without meaning to point you out, but that's quite quickly how we can quite quickly pull something up about a toilet, a sports event, and it can quite quickly turn into a debate. And I think what we have to do is to kind of rise above that headline debate, so we can actually get on with, why is there so much transphobia? And I don't believe it's over somebody in a boxing ring necessarily. I think it's systemic, runs through the country. But that might just have touched a nerve for me, being a trans person living in Manchester. I'm going to move on to the next question. What will you do to prevent Manchester's gay village from being redeveloped beyond queer recognition? I love this question. Because obviously the gay village has it's gone on many journeys, and it definitely has hit the redevelopment journey at the minute, because it's prime kind of property, isn't it? So like, what can we do so it doesn't just become, it loses its queerness, which is what attracts people. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start with Melanie.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Well, I remember reading with some horror that there was a suggestion that the gay village may be rebranded as the Portland Village. And just, I mean, honestly, the absolute horror of that is hard to comprehend. I think the key issue is that we've got to recognise just how important the village is to Greater Manchester, and how important these spaces are for members of the LGBT community. I know when I've been, I went off to do my first law school in Chester. My then friend, who had been at grown up in London, been at university in Liverpool, came to Chester and said, you know, darling, I stayed 3 months for you, otherwise I'd have left after 2 weeks. There was nowhere for me, and went back to London, much to my heartbreak and sorrow. But that is exactly, it's not sort of a place for hen parties to go on a bloody tourist visit. And
what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Well, I think it's about recognising what it is and making sure that there is a real value amongst the city, and not just about it being development land. This is so important as a space for people to go to and be safe and be looked after and be accepted, and that is worth more to society than the ground, you know, sale space within that area.
It feels like erasure a little bit. So I'm going to move on quickly, just so we can get round. I
think that's a really important point. Okay, it's got to be protected because of how very, very important it is to those who use it and who need it, and it is need quite often.
Brilliant, Andy.
Well, it's as you said, Kate. I mean, you can't sort of set something in aspic, can you, say it doesn't change? So of course it can change and improve. Maybe there's too many takeaways. Maybe we could do with a few less. I don't know. It could be improved in certain ways. But the one thing we mustn't do is make the mistakes of the past, where we let prime assets that put Greater Manchester on the map go. I'm thinking of music venues, and we have seen that happen in the past. So we've got to keep what it is that is unique about it, the character. It needs to be absolutely a place that keeps that identity, but be prepared to change. I think this is one for Manchester City Council, but I do think they take this very, very seriously. They're conscious of the history bound up in the place, and I think things are done with a great deal of consultation and care. And that's how it should be, and that's how it must continue to be. What I would say as well, though, is let's not only think always about the city centre. I think the story for Greater Manchester, when it comes to how we kind of build on what we've done and what we've achieved, is to say what goes on in the city centre increasingly we take to the boroughs. And I made that point about care homes before, but it should also be the case that we are working with our other 9 councils to create places where people want to go and feel safe in all of the other 9 boroughs. And I think that's something that we should certainly push for as well. So yeah, it is absolutely a unique part of Manchester, and we mustn't make the mistakes of the past and let its unique identity be sort of taken away, gentrified, whatever it might be. You can see a bit of gentrification creeping in and around, but I think the heart of it is still what we love about it, and long may that be the case.
I think it might have needed a bit of gentrification.
A bit, that's what I'm saying. See, I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking about, I don't know, galleries, coffee shops, bookshops.
I've always said that. I want to see a gallery. I want it to be a vibrant cultural centre.
Yeah, I think it could be more.
But I think my fear is about that. I'm going to quickly move to Stephen, if that's okay. Stephen, what are your thoughts on the redevelopment of the gay village?
It's just a matter of economics, isn't it? If it's prime retail land, it will occur. Even though there's many buildings, many communities been dispersed, over time. It's just basic economics that will happen. And as Andy said, it's down to Manchester City Council on that one. All we can do if elected as mayor is to voice our opinions, and hopefully it will carry weight with them. There's a lot of areas being developed and a lot of areas been lost. But I'm of the opinion that it's the people that make an area. It's not a building. And if the people need to find...
Who's made this area? Who do you think's made this area?
Well, the gay community, it's a long while since I went there. It's for a night out. I'm talking about over 15 years since I went there. But it's the people who make it. They developed it into their own community. But economics will decide whether that retail is developed or not, you know, and that's what will occur. You know.
So it's just economics.
Sorry, go on.
It's just economics, you're saying?
Yeah, I think it will just be economics that will decide whether it stays, whether that stays as it is, or whether the community moves and develops or goes into another different particular area. You know, as we've seen throughout the history, town centres actually move. You know, communities actually move, and you may find this may be a case as economics decide that area needs is prime development. It gets bought up. Companies will come in, they will develop it.
Starbucks, there you go.
Yeah, they'll do it. They'll develop it. But all we have to make sure is that the community survives wherever it's located.
LGBT audience, I'm sure they're really pleased about that. I can quickly move on now.
It's a statement of fact, isn't it?
It's just a fact, isn't it? That's what it is. Right. I'd like to move on to Simon now, please.
Thanks. So I love the village. I have had some great nights and some great days, afternoons, sitting along that canal with friends. It has changed over the past 16, 17 years that I've been about up here. Some things for the better, some things not so better. I think it's really easy to do a bit of Manchester City, you know, Labour bashing. They're driven to grow the city, and I think they have, at times, not all the time, but I think at times they have taken advantage of the gay village as a tourist hotspot, and not invested as much as they should have done to protect and look after it. I mean, one aspect, I think, you know, we see all these rainbow crossings appearing across the country. We've been asking for one in the village for over 20 years and it's not been done. And now people say, oh, it's a crossing, it's not that, it's a symbol, and symbols matter. And if Manchester City Council actually thought, yeah, we're gonna put a crossing in there, rainbow flag crossing, and we're going to, you know, give that to the community and support them in their request for that, I think it would have gone a long way to actually thinking, oh, we are cared about. I mean, you look at campus and you look at the development on the Princess Street side, and what's going to happen on the old NCP car park and the Chawton Street bus station. What's going to happen there? How is that going to affect the village? I mean, communities do move. I mean, I know what's happened in London. The gay community's moved, Soho, Vauxhall, Shoreditch. You know, is that a good thing? Maybe not. Sometimes we just don't know. I remember going to the church in Bolton. That's a bar and club that's no longer there. That was an LGBT space in Bolton, and that's not there anymore. And I think, and to finish up, I think the LGBT community is sometimes a victim of its own success. A lot of my friends and people I know go to the Northern Quarter, go to Deansgate, or stay local in their own town centres, and are happy to, because they feel safe and happy in those areas. But what about the people that don't feel confident and don't feel safe? They still need a place to come and be and let loose and feel safe doing that. So, but yeah, thank you. You're on mute. Kate.
I'm going to unmute myself. Classic. Soon we'll be out of lockdown. You'll just be unmute free. I'll just be barking at you from the other side of the room. I like this here. It says somebody, I think it's Bob Green, it says community assets are needed in the village and throughout Greater Manchester, so LGBT plus charities should be supported to purchase space for all our communities to use. It doesn't all have to be bars and clubs. That feels a bit like keeping the heart there, and I think there could be something in that. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of jump ahead. I thought we're kind of getting on with time. I'm just going to kind of leap forward to some more quick round kind of questions that we might be able to kind of jump into. So I feel like as we're kind of on the LGBT hustings here, this seems like quite a good question. Which LGBTQI plus organisation do the candidates have direct contact with, and what kind of work are they doing with them? And we're going to start with Andy.
Oh, sorry about that, Kate. Well, a huge number. I should have said at the start, actually, I'm really proud to have appointed Carl Austin Bean as my LGBT advisor. I think he holds the first person to hold any such role of that kind in the country, and obviously supported by a panel. And you know, that is something that you know, we are very much committed to and will build on. And through that, of course, I have a dialogue with all kinds of organisations. So I should mention the Proud Trust, who we funded. You were talking about community spaces. Obviously, they support young people from all over Greater Manchester. 450,000 to rebuild on Sydney Street. I'm told it looks amazing what's being built. So yeah, very proud of our work with them. Obviously, the LGBT Foundation and Paul I've mentioned, who came to our reform board. We have done a huge amount of work with the Albert Kennedy Trust around homelessness. We have, I should say actually, you know, all of the work I've done on homelessness has really brought over to me how many, particularly young LGBT plus people are at risk of homelessness, and how many have been supported through a bed every night. There is a massive issue there. We are currently consulting on a youth homelessness prevention pathfinder for Greater Manchester. So, you know, we are very conscious that there's more work to be done there, but I'd say the Albert Kennedy Trust have been a big help there. George House Trust, with our commitment to a 90-90-90 city with regard to HIV/AIDS, you know, we've done a great deal of work with them. So we've got some brilliant organisations, and as Paul said earlier, I'm very proud that so many are headquartered in Manchester and are providing a very, very valuable and important service. We support them all, and I will continue to support them all if re-elected. I'm grateful to the way they've helped me in the last 4 years, and there is just a lot more we need to do together.
Good. There is also an amazing trans arts organisation called transcreative.uk, which I head up. I mean, there's just so much going on here.
I made a real mistake there, didn't I? Okay,
Stephen, what about you? Which organisations do you work? LGBT organisations are you in contact with, and what kind of work are you doing with them?
Unfortunately, my work is all centred around the trade union that I run. I don't deal with a lot of organisations outside of this. Mine's all to do with the trade union, dealing with employees' issues on a day-to-day basis, no matter what they are. That's my day-to-day core activity. So I deal with people from all communities, from all backgrounds, and listen to their concerns and do the best I can to deal with them. So I'm not in direct contact because it's not part of my day-to-day work. So that's all I can say.
Do you feel it could be part of your day-to-day work?
It could be part, and therefore, if it became mayor, then I would obviously want to have meetings as soon as possible with the various groups from all sides, LGBT, I know groups. But at the moment, the issues I've always dealt with are on an individual, personalised basis from a trade union point, and I would be looking for guidance from the LGBT groups from what they need from the mayor. You know, I'd be coming from it with a completely fresh approach because I don't have any preconceived ideas of what you may or may not need. So you come to me, you tell me what you need, and as mayor, we will look to get it developed.
That's a really interesting. What can happen as an LGBT person? It can be quite exhausting to have to do that labour. You know, sometimes I think as a a kind of person here who's LGBT, sometimes there's an expectation for people in power, if you like, to have done some of that labour. So I think that's my tip for you. I would say if you do get elected, that maybe don't expect the LGBT community to come and sort it all out.
Well, there's so many things. Yeah, there's so many things that a mayor looks at that they don't have. They haven't done everything. Yeah. That the mayor has done, and this is one of the points where I've covered quite a lot in retail, public transport, dealing with people's issues. I admit this is one area that I would need to look at and develop. They all involve LGBT. Everything you've talked about does involve LGBT. It does, yeah, on an individual basis. Yeah. So you had your chance. You could have had a chance. Not with an organisation. I don't deal with organisations. I deal with individuals and look at individual rights and deal with them. Okay, so how about you, Simon?
So over the past 22 years now, I've been involved in university LGBT associations. I've been involved with, and I'm still involved with LGBT plus Lib Dems. I've sat on their committee and I've advised future policy. I'm working with the Lib Dem Health Committee on age-appropriate sex education, and working with people like Lee Darg and the LGBT plus Lib Dems to actually formulate a policy that we can all support and get to conference to get on our party's platform. I'm open to working with any organisation. I think the Village Angels I was going to join, however, I was doing shift work at the time, and I think that has held me back from a lot of more involvement. I remember when I lived in Northampton, I was part of Pride in Northampton and setting it up and trying to get it going, but that was a long while ago. But I think as mayor, I'd be in the room with you, and I'd be making choices and making things happen for you. And it is, I think we can always say, come to me, tell me what you want. It is exhausting. You won't necessarily have to do that. I know what you want. I've seen all the briefings. I've seen, I see all the information out there. The Albert Kennedy Trust does a brilliant job. And I think a lot of people forget where it came from and how it was set up. I don't think any young LGBT person should feel abandoned in the city region. The George House Trust is a place that I have wanted to volunteer in for the past 15 years and just never slotted it in and got in touch. I've tried to fundraise for them recently. And I think, to be fair, this year with It's a Sin coming out has actually refocused a lot of our minds on the things that are needed and things that are needed locally, and get involved and get people to...
This is a quick fire round.
Sorry, yes,
saying,
it is.
Sorry,
there's so much.
Is that okay? So
yeah, go on.
Move on to Melanie. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Kit. I don't have the privilege of saying that I have run a city and had a huge amount of input into different groups and whatever else. So I'm going to have to bring it back to actually what I have done. And what I have done is twofold. One, I have been a safe place. So I have had friends who have got children and teenagers transitioning come to me after Tavistock and Bell, and with all that was going on with Gender GP, saying, what do I do? Where do I go for help? What can you do to help me? And they came to me because I care, because I am informed and have informed myself about what's going on, and because I will then go and do the work for them to find out what the answers are, so that they could just sit with their child who needed them there. And that, I think, is what an ally does. And I'm a cis woman. I'm not part of the community, but I am here as an ally, and I will do that work. and I will stand up, and it will be my voice, because it's not for anyone who is part of a minority who suffers from discrimination to have to fight alone. And in fact, it should be me reiterating what has been said, promoting that voice and making sure it is heard loudly. So that's who I am. It's not about you telling me what you need. It's about me finding out. And you're exactly right. It's not about requesting emotional labour and time from those who are oppressed. It's about actually putting the hours in, putting the work in, educating yourself, learning, listening when actually someone does speak to you, and then going out and making it happen. And I said, I haven't done it for a city, but I have done it for friends, and I have done it for those who've needed me, because they trust me and believe me that I am an ally. And I just want to bring that across the city.
Thank you. So I think we're coming to near the end now. There was loads more questions, but I kind of switched through to try and get as many as I could. So now, just to round up, I'm going to ask the question, why should LGBT voters vote for you? And so let's start with Stephen.
One of the things that we've mentioned is about individual rights, individual respect and equality. We've got to treat people as an individual. We've got to make sure they have places to go. And one of the things that is concerning me at the moment, and this is one of my main manifesto points, is we've got to make the police fit for purpose. At the moment, we can go on about reporting of hate crime, but if it's not going to be dealt with by the police, who are under special measures since it's under this mayoralty, then their voices are just not going to be heard. Their concerns are not going to be dealt with. And my concern is to make sure that the policing is fit for purpose and we get things sorted. Then if there is concerns to do with hate crime, gets reported, gets dealt with. At the moment, we don't have a police force that can deal with that because it's under special measures. You know, over 80,000 crimes not being dealt with properly, a lot of them violent and abusive, you know, and you probably say that a lot of the violent and abusive, the LGBT community deals with that on a daily basis. So they're going to be part of that 80,000. So why we've got to make sure that they be dealt with. And the only way you're going to do that is to change the mayoralty, because over the last 4 or 5 years, which has been the Labour mayor, it's gone downhill, and we've got to turn it around to make sure that people have a safe place to go to report their issues and to get it dealt with. And that's why my manifesto is really centred on making sure the police are fit for purpose. And if you've got concerns and you've got a hate crime, it will be dealt with.
Thank you, Stephen. Andy, would you like to go next? Why should the LGBT community vote for you?
Thanks, Kate. Well, thanks everybody for putting on tonight and all of your questions. And to answer the final one, because I've been there for the community, an ally for the community, having appointed the country's first LGBT plus advisor, I think that shows my commitment to continue to work with the community. And I just want to say something more actually about the commitments I made on HIV/AIDS. That was a big commitment when I went to Pride and said that at the vigil a few years ago, that we would become one of the pioneer cities around the world working for the eradication of new infection. And I'm really glad and feel proud that we did that. You know, it's someone, Carl made this point to me, you know, if we'd approached HIV/AIDS back in the 80s as we're now approaching the virus, life would have been so much different for so many people. But because of the stigma, you know, things were not done that should have been done. But we are now working with the George House Trust on undetectable equals untransmissible. And that is about getting rid of the stigma, isn't it? That if people have a low viral load, then there is no reason for there to be any stigma, and we're really working hard and supporting that. I just want to give people the figures on that 90-90-90, you know, where you're saying 90 people knowing their status, 90 people on treatment, 90% with a suppressed viral load. The latest figures for Greater Manchester are 91, 98, 97. So we are driving change, and I'm very proud of that. And that is a reason, I think, to give me your support. So we continue to make that change. But Kate, if I could just say something in closing, you know, listening to Stephen's doom and gloom, it's all awful, our police force is terrible. Well, they're not actually, Stephen. There's so many brilliant people working in Greater Manchester Police who are very committed to working to support the gay village and everybody connected with the community. The Village Angels, they work with, and I will commit to support on an ongoing basis. And let me just say something about this place that we all call home. It was called the most exciting and livable big city in the UK. This is a fantastic place. And in my manifesto today, I'm saying let's take it up to the next level with a London-style public transport system for Greater Manchester, where we have an integrated system over trams and buses, a daily cap on what people can spend, buses under public control. That is a reason to vote for me, because I will bring that change through as my top priority in the next mayoral term, and it will take this city we love up to that higher level even further and make it even better. So thanks everybody for your questions tonight, and I'll continue to be here for you.
LGBT love a buzz. We love it. We have to get around. So how about you, Simon? Why should we vote for you? And why haven't you managed to get that volunteering together? 15 years. I mean, why did you even mention it? Come on.
It's been awful. But no, I could sit here and say, look, I'm one of you, please vote for me. But no, I've said this at other things, you know, Greater Manchester, Andy's right. Andy, you know, Greater Manchester is a great place to live and work. We are a loud, brash, proud city, and part of that is the LGBT community. You know, you go around the world and they will know about Manchester because of football, because of trams, because of Canal Street. You know, those are the three things whenever I go on holiday, people always say when they find out I'm from Manchester. It's like, oh yeah, the gay community, Canal Street. So we've got a duty to protect that heritage. We've got a duty to protect that community. And in me, I will protect you and I will stand up for you. And I'll make sure that our charities and our outreach groups and our community as a whole has the resources it needs to make itself even better in the years to come. Thank you.
Melanie, I've saved you to last because you're a woman and I'm supporting women, and I see you've got your pronouns in there, and I thought you could have the last word of the candidates because often women don't get that. So I'm handing it over to you to tell us why the LGBT community should vote.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start with I think Simon's missed the trick, because believe me, I made a big deal of being a woman at the women's hustings. So I'm going to pull him up on that one. I think in part I've answered this question in the last one by making absolutely adamant and clear how strong I am as an ally. And it's where I started. I'm quite prepared to admit that we have problems as a party, and I am the one fighting them along with other allies, and we are going to fix it. And we're going to stop these problems within our party. And if I'm elected mayor, I am going to bring that fight to Greater Manchester, and I'm going to make sure that we are not seeing any more rise in transphobia or homophobia within the city, and hate crime will be dealt with appropriately. And I'm going to issue a challenge to my party leader tonight as well in this hustings. She's put in her manifesto that she wants to make London the most inclusive city in this country. Well, I tell you what, Sian, I've watched it, I've seen it, challenge accepted, because I'm going to do this with Greater Manchester, and that's going to be, you know, can you imagine two fierce green women leading two of the two biggest cities in this country and aiming to make us absolutely trans friendly and a safe space for all of the LGBT community? That would be amazing. The final thing, to bring it back to sort of party issues, a lot of the discussions and points that have come out tonight have been issues that relate to the council. And predominantly across all of the boroughs, we are a Labour city region. It's a Labour dominated council, and we've got a Labour mayor at the moment. And I just think what the conversation that we have as Greens going into elected roles is the fact that we can make a difference. Any elected Green can make a difference. And people who are in Trafford and people who are in Tameside will have seen what an elected Green councillor does as a difference, and how they bring the really key messages around the climate emergency right to the fore. And now I want people to think about how important that is, and imagine that me, elected mayor of this city region, will put a Green into every room. Every conversation that would be happening would have a Green candidate there pushing and saying, what are you doing? Why is this happening? Where is the basis for you doing this? And another Labour leader and another Labour mayor doesn't bring that same challenge. It's just someone else in the same party. So actually a vote for me is a real vote for change and for challenge to the status quo in our city region. So that's the other reason. So thank you very much, Kate.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Stephen, Simon, Andy and Melanie. You know, you've come and faced the queers tonight. I know you've got hustings all over the place. And I would just say whoever wins, just be an ally, value your LGBT community and help them grow and feel safe in this city. That's what I want for my LGBT community. And that is something that you are going to have to pick up and run with, because it's already started. We know that it's a great city for LGBT people, but it can be better. We can make it even better. And I like the ambition in the room. I like hearing that. It's really exciting. So thank you very much. It's my first hustings. I think I'd do it again if I had to. So have a good evening, everybody. And thanks for coming and vote. Remember to vote. It's going to be closed, registered by the 19th of April. You can do postal votes up to the 25th of April. And the election's actually going to be on the 6th of May. Very exciting. Good luck to you all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for the people
Yeah.
that joined in and all your chats and conversations. It's great. And they're going to be used and carried on. And I'm sure that people here read them. So you're kind of informing these political candidates as you go along. It's always worth doing it. So thank you.
No, thank you to everyone. Yeah.
Night all.
Take care.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you very much.